Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out. This is our introduction to real estate event, and we're happy to see all of you. It's been over a year since our last in-person event, so we're really excited that we get to actually see faces. I wanted to take a second to introduce all of our lovely speakers over there. So first, you've got Justin Recca. He is the broker owner of Innovative Realty. He's been an agent and investor in Central Florida for over 15 years, and he was appointed in 2018 to the Florida Real Estate Appraisal Board by the governor. Next, we have Mr. Brian Tews. He's the vice president of Tews Mortgage. He and his team are skilled with investor financing as well as purchase and refinance transactions. Next, we have Alberto Nikodimov. He is our business development manager at Innovative Realty. He was born in Bulgaria, raised in Cyprus, and educated in the UK. So he has extensive experience in working with international investors. Hi, come on in. And then finally, we have Mr. Matt Kelly. He is a real estate agent and an investor. He was voted in the top 20 under 40 out of more than 18,000 agents in the Central Florida area. That's by ORA, the Orlando Regional Realtors Association. So without further ado, Justin.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. As Katie said, it is quite refreshing to be out from behind the computer screen in Zoom in an actual live event. So this is the first time, it's the first time we've done this in a year. It's nice. I'm glad you all could join us. I think it'll be a great evening. Hopefully you guys get a lot out of it. Our goal tonight is to provide you with as much value as possible. So we'll get to it. A bit about me. As Katie said, my name is Justin. I'm the broker of Innovative Realty. Excuse me. Innovative Realty started in 2006 to provide real estate and management services to the greater Central Florida market. Since that time, we've handled thousands of transactions for buyers, sellers, owners, investors, and residents. And we'd like to think we've done a very nice job for them and provided them with a lot of value over the years as well. From that, little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So as everybody knows, drink some refreshments over there. Feel free to help yourself. Restrooms are just out this door and to the left. We will do a question and answer toward the end of the event. So if you have any questions, please hold till then. And for those of you who might be a bit shy about asking questions, the team and I will be around afterward to answer any of those that you might have. I would like to take a second also and acknowledge the team from Innovative and all those folks who've helped out tonight. They did a great job in putting everything together. So I'd like to acknowledge all of that. And one more special acknowledgement, Miss Katie Ettinger, who you just recently met. Today is her 10-day anniversary with Innovative Realty. So, I'm sorry, 10 days. It's, 10 years. So, yeah. She's been instrumental with Innovative over the years, a great friend and partner in building the business, and it's just been wonderful to work with her over these last 10 years. So without further ado, we'll get to it. So what I wanted to do is find out, as you all know, this is sort of a seminar or introduction into real estate investing. So to give us an idea of what experience level is in the audience, maybe with a show of hands, if you wouldn't mind saying, how many agents are here? Real estate agents, licensed real estate agents? Okay, so quite a few. Thank you. And as far as folks who've done investing, maybe 1 to 5 properties, 5 to 10. Okay, so relatively new. So 1 to 5 is great, but overall relatively new. So this will be sort of a very brief introduction to the entire real estate process, the investing process. It will be sort of summary by myself with other folks here. Brian will be covering a bit more of the mortgage aspects of things. Mr. Matt Kelly will be dealing with the purchase and acquisition, some of the numbers and financials as well. And Alberto will wrap everything up with a bit deeper dive into the financial aspects of it. So we want to be respectful of your time. We figure this will be about 45 minutes or so, and then 15 minutes or so after that for questions and answers. So, why real estate? For me, it was the flexibility and creativity. So maybe to back up for a moment, I actually got into real estate somewhat by chance. So I went to the University of Florida I was actually a reserve police officer while there. My goal at the time was to get into federal law enforcement. I graduated from Florida. I moved down here. I was working with the sheriff's office for a bit. It was a great experience, but decided I wanted to do something a little bit more. I left the sheriff's office, worked in various sales capacities for some very large companies for a few years after that. And then my wife and I hooked up with some friends of ours, another husband and wife, another couple, and we decided that we were going to start investing in single-family homes. So we spent about a year going through various educations, a lot of reading, sort of a very deep dive into all the components of it to familiarize ourselves with what that entails exactly. And then we started doing it, and I was terrified. It was quite an experience. But from there, we ramped up pretty quick. We were buying about 20, 25 homes a year. Our general model was to keep, fix and flip some of them, and the really choice homes we were going to keep, use the funds that we were making from the fix and flips and paying down those. And at the end of 5, 10 years, we'd have a nice portfolio of free and clear homes and just riding some nice cash flow. And we did that. So we did that beginning in about 2003 and all the way through, and fortuitously just before everything fell apart in 2008, my partner and his wife decided to move to Arizona, and we liquidated most of the portfolio. We kept a few, they kept a few, and it was just dumb luck timing. But going back to the flexibility and creativity of things, we started off with just trying everything. So my first deal was actually a contract assignment. I still remember meeting the guy at McDonald's, terrified, assigning him the contract. He went on to close on the property, and it was a fantastic deal. But everything from contract assignments, wholesaling, fixing and flipping, buying and holding. We did subject twos. We bought on lease option and sold on lease option. So we did quite a few different things, had a good, well-rounded experience with it all. But at the end of the day, we decided that buying and holding seemed to be what fit for us best. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on here today as well. And that speaks quite a bit to the creativity of it. It's really, real estate is beautiful in the sense that you can be as creative as you want to be. There's always something to do with every deal you're going to come across. Rarely is it ever, it's just so bad that nothing can be done with it. There's always something that can be done with it. And then, of course, once you get into real estate, you're going to have to figure out what exactly is it that you want to do. Real estate's a big space. There's commercial, industrial, office, warehouse, residential, multifamily. It's a huge area. You can broker it as a real estate agent. You can manage it as property managers. So you want to sort of dial into what it is that you find most interesting. And most people start off with single-family residential, townhomes, condos, things like that. So does anyone know, and there are quite a few benefits of owning rental property, but could anyone tell me a few? Just by show of hands, anybody have an idea? Just start shouting some off. Passive income. Mortgage pay down, yes. Appreciation, yes. Anyone else? What was that? Depreciation on taxes, yes. So those are all correct answers. And we'll get into a bit more of those as well. But you're right. So rental income and cash flow, which is what most people are familiar with. Many people forget about the mortgage pay down. While the tenants are living there, they're actually paying down your mortgage for you. The appreciation, fairly common. You can expect a certain amount of that generally, and in certain times more than others, of course. Depreciation is a little bit more interesting. It's generally something that the accountant is going to take care of. It's a bit more complicated of a calculation, but the accountant will help you out with that. I've always looked at it from the legacy standpoint as well. So if you are able to amass even a small portfolio, imagine what that's going to do for your children once you've passed. They've walking into cash flow and all of these other things, and you've left a little bit of a legacy for them. So that's always nice as well. So where do you begin? We touched on a little bit of that already. But the first step, just like everything, is you want to come up with a goal, a very clear, concise goal, a business plan. You want to outline as detailed as possible what it is that your intent is. What type of real estate will you invest in? Are you going to start off in multifamily? Are you going to start off in single family, commercial, whatever it might be? Many people start off as agents and then sort of naturally progress into it from there. What are your end goals? Is it going to be supplementing retirements, cash flow, both? or the legacy, like we talked about briefly a second ago. And you'll see a lot of those different, everybody does it for a different reason. And oftentimes it's centered around the financial aspects of it, but it's more to that. In order to have any longevity and really enjoy it and appreciate it, you've got to have a deeper understanding of why it is that you want to do it in the first place. So spend some time. You're all excited, you want to just get right to it, but if you spend a bit of time up front and really dive deep into why you want to do it, I think you'll find that down the road it'll be a much easier process. And let's see, this is a good time to maybe pause for a second, get everybody to introduce each other. If you want to take just a minute, maybe lean over to a friend and outline some brief goals that you might have, just off the top of your head. Nothing fancy, we're going to keep it real short, but just say hello to your neighbor, maybe exchange some of your goals that you might have, and we'll come back in just a second. All right, let's see what everybody came up with. Am I holding it close up? Let's see what everybody came up with. It sounds like everybody met pretty easily, and I think what you'll find too, I've made some very dear friends out of coming to things like this. So if you have the ability and the chance to meet someone, stay in touch. I think you'll find much will come out of that. So I was very glad to see everybody engaged. Does anyone care to share a goal that they might have? Anyone? Sure. He could probably share it for himself. Okay. Anyone else that's not up there? All right.
We have a game where she's going to use my money to find me properties and she's going to design them so we can rent them out.
Excellent. Excellent. But you see and it's like, again, it's as creative as you can be. So, and really spend some time on that, because I think you'll find some value in there. So once you've created a goal, you got to choose a location. Where are you going to go? Most people start off close to home, and that makes sense, right? You're here, you know the area, you know the market. That's kind of the default where everybody starts. But there's a lot of people out there who might want to go out of state. They might want to go out of country, out of the region, or they're maybe looking for emerging markets. Interestingly, in the United States, with the United States being as large of a market as it is, at any given time, there's always a market that's doing well. So you'll see sort of cycles. The United States doesn't move in one massive cycle. Each little market is moving in its own cycle oftentimes. And that's what we're talking about when we speak of emerging markets. So for example, we might be at the peak of a market here in Central Florida. Somewhere else might be just coming out of the lower part and on the rise. And those are some of the areas that you want to look into. You have some benefits with the appreciation and so forth in those markets. But so those are the first three things. You want to find out where you're going to invest. Some of the other things that you're looking for, demographics and job growth. You want a place that has increasing population, preferably, increasing job growth and job prospects. Local and state governments who are favorable to business and industry and conducive to business and job growth. You'll find a lot of areas in the United States that are not that, and you'll find a lot of areas that are. So you want to be just aware of those things. Landlord-friendly environments. If you're going to be an investor, you might as well invest in an area that makes it easy to be a landlord. There's a lot of places where if you have issues with residents, it can be quite cumbersome to alleviate yourself of those issues. So that is definitely something to consider as well. Passive progress, that's sort of within an individual market. So if you think of Orlando, Orlando is a big place, but there's areas in Orlando that are moving faster than others. Maybe it's Lake Nona or something like that. So that's what you would see, is you want to sort of see if you can identify where that path of progress is and get out in front of it. And you'll find that the investing is just easier. You just sort of ride that wave a bit. And once you've had a location, it's time to start building the team. And this might be the most crucial aspect of it, and one that a lot of folks just try and go their own, and eventually, hopefully, they find that that's not the best way. So team members can be anyone from real estate agents and brokers, property management companies, title companies and attorneys, mortgage partners like Mr. Brian, real estate attorneys, home inspectors, and then, of course, the trades. If you're managing property, you're going to have problems. So you need your plumbers and your electricians, your general maintenance guys, air conditioning, all of those things. You want to have all those put together in advance especially the folks that are going to be involved in helping you with the acquisition of it. Surround yourself with professionalism and expertise. You can't be a professional at everything, and that's why you surround yourself with those folks. Trustworthy and like-minded people, it just helps. If you get along with them, that's just an added bonus. So if you find an attorney that you like and you guys click and you get along well, great. And you want to understand, and perhaps most importantly, this is sort of harkens back to going it alone or trying to go it alone. You want to understand how, why, and what to delegate and when. So investing it's definitely a team sport, and it's something that is, it has a lot of moving parts, and you can only know so much. So when you have folks like that you can lean on, be it the attorneys or the real estate brokers who have the experience in the market, other investors might even be part of the team, folks that have maybe a little bit more experience than you that you can leverage for some help along the way. All those guys are going to be going to pay off quite a bit down the road. So building a team. And with that, I'm going to invite Mr. Tews from Tews Mortgage up, the first member of the team.
Brian. Thank you, sir. I'm going back just because I want to see what part of the team I still need. It's most of it. All right, hi guys. My name is Brian Tews. As Justin mentioned, I'm the vice president of Tews Mortgage. We are a local mortgage brokerage here in Orlando. We have 2 branches. We are family owned, if you couldn't tell by the name. Our second branch is down in the Keys, where you could probably guess is where my dad lives. And we love to go to those branches rather than the Orlando for our team meetings. So we saw some hands up earlier. I think majority of this room, 1 to 5 properties. Was that right? We had some property owners already here. I think this side was more so. Am I saying that correctly? Okay, let's do it again. Raise your hand if you own a property. Okay, I was right, mostly on this side. Okay, we're going to just kind of talk about basics 101 of getting pre-approved. Please raise your hand if you have questions. If you don't want to ask now, ask later. We're going to stick around. So the pre-approval, to basically find out what you can actually purchase. There's basically 3 steps to it. The first one, a lot of people know it as a pre-qualification. That's where you call me, say, hey, Brian, I'm trying to purchase a property. We get to talking. You tell me what your credit score is, how much money you have saved up, and also how much you make. I say, that sounds awesome. It sounds like you could buy a $200,000 home. I just did a pre-qualification. That's all it is. What you want to be is pre-approved. Pre-approved gives you that power to purchase a property. So besides the call, we're also going to collect an application, which is easy, takes 5 minutes. We're going to ask you for some documents. That'll take you probably 5 more minutes. And then we're going to check your credit. When it comes to the call, yes, we are going to talk about those 3 aspects I mentioned, but more importantly, we're going to talk about your goal. I mean, that's why you guys are here. Your goal is to invest in real estate. So we're going to bring that up in the call. We're going to talk about if this is going to be your 3rd or 5th home or your first one. We're going to talk about where you're looking. We're going to talk about who's your team. Do you have a property manager? Do you have a realtor? We are also going to discuss your expectations. And I'm going to set the expectations for you. If not me, it's going to be my team. If you're coming to me and saying, I have a 500 credit score and $2,000 in the bank, we're going to make a plan for you because you're not buying next week. But if you have great credit score, money in the bank, you've done this before, your tax returns are already filed, then your timeline is going to be a little bit quicker. So we're going to talk about that on the initial call. In regards to the application and the documents, so if you've never filled out a mortgage application, they're basically collecting all the same info. It doesn't matter who you go with. It's going to be your personal life. It's going to be your employment. It's going to be if you own any properties already. And then when it comes to the documents, here are just some tips that maybe other lenders won't tell you. We cannot take screenshots. Get asked that, I think, every day. It's so easy to log into your Chase or your Wells Fargo account on your phone, send me a screenshot and say, Brian, here's the $50,000 I have in the bank. Where's your name? Is that yours? Is that your cousin Joe's? Whose money is that? Is it mine? So basically, I don't know if you send a screenshot. You'll end up having to upload it as either a PDF or a JPEG. Let's see what other boring stuff we have up here. So fill out the application as best as you can. Again, guys, if you've never filled out an application, there's going to be a bit of questions. I did mention it's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. Just kind of go through it, but stay focused. Stay focused when you're filling it out. And that last one, I came up with that earlier this week. I thought that was funny. If it doesn't have your name on the document, you can't play the game. I don't know it's yours. Again, it could be your cousin Joe's. So make sure that any document that you guys end up turning in has your name. Rather self-explanatory. Okay, credit. Feel like some people just get scared when we talk about credit. So yes, we're going to look at your score. True or false? If you go to Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax and pull your credit score right now, it's going to be the same credit score that I'm going to pull. Raise your hand if you think that's true. Wow, you guys are geniuses. Okay. I have to come up with harder questions. That's correct. It's false. So whenever you pull your credit score, whether from one of those bureaus, when you log into your bank and they say, check your credit score here, or Credit Karma, or any of those, you are looking at what's called your consumer credit score. That is what is used when you're getting a credit card. When you go to a car dealership and they pull your credit, it's called an auto credit score. It's going to be completely different. Can you guess what mine is called? You know, guess what do you think it's called? Mortgage credit. You're right. If I had a Starbucks gift card, I'd give it to you. So that's basically it. It is a mortgage credit score. So when you guys look at these scores, I'm telling you right now, give or take, it's going to be within 20 points of that. So if you've got an 800 on your Credit Karma, I'm either going to get a 780, 820, somewhere in between. Even if you go to Experian, TransUnion, all those, okay? Yes, we're going to look at your liabilities. We're going to see your monthly payments. I'm going to get into the details of the monthly payments in a second. Always get asked, well, what monthly payments are you looking at, Brian? I'll tell you what we're not looking at. We're not looking at your phone bill. We're not looking at what you pay for your health insurance, nothing like that. I'm going to get more into the details of that shortly. We are going to look at late payments. Anyone have a random idea? Maybe some agents might know this already. How far back does a credit score go in regards to your liabilities? All right, you guys are whispering. What was it? You're close. Who says 7? You? Oh, okay. Good, dude. Yeah, that's pretty good. I was thought you were going to go like 9, 8, just like keep working down. Yeah, 7 years. So if you had a late payment on your Home Depot card from 2014, it's going to be there unless it was January or February of 2014. Debt to income. You guys heard of that before? I see a lot of agents saying, yeah, Brian lost deals because of that debt to income. So debt to income is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to take your liabilities. We're going to take your income. We're going to come up with a number. And that number is going to say whether you can buy a $100,000 condo or $1 million house, basically. So into a little bit of the details, what we're looking for. Income, full-time, part-time, self-employed. Yes, if you are self-employed, you can still purchase a home. Yes, it is 2 years worth. And yes, if you have not filed your 2020 tax returns, that is okay. We can use your 18 and 19 and a profit and loss. For debt, mentioned, kind of alluded to this, your credit cards. Well, Brian, I always pay my credit cards off at the end of the month. That's awesome. You probably, when you log in, it'll probably say like $25 minimum payment or something like that. That's what we're going to end up using if it shows when we pull your credit. Car payments, that's self-explanatory. Student loans. Do you think we look at the student loans if they're deferred? Yeah. You say yes? You're correct. So even though you are not paying your student loans, let's say you've got $20,000 worth of student loans and they're deferred thanks to Uncle Joe until September, 1% of the outstanding balance is what is used towards your debt. So easy math is $200 on a $20,000 student loans that you're not making any payments. We still look at it as $200. So what we do is we take all of your debts and we take your income and we come up with that DTI, that debt to income. We want it to be under this 43%. So very simple math. Let's say that you had a couple credit cards and a car payment, and that all totaled up to, say you got a pretty nice car, so $500 a month, right? And let's say that the house you want to buy, the mortgage on it is going to be $2,000. 500, $2,000 is $2,500. If you make $5,000 a month, and this is before taxes, not after taxes, you would take that $2,500, you divide it by 5,000. What does that get you? 50%, which means you can't buy that house. I'm sorry, Lisa. But if you were below 43%, then yes. So guys, that's how you calculate that. A lot of loan officers use that and they try to kind of hit you with those technical terms as if you're not going to know. I'm telling you, this is exactly how you do it. So just find out what your monthly payments are. When you're on Realtor.com or any of these other sites and you're looking at homes, there's going to be a calculator on there 9 times out of 10. You can see what that mortgage payment is going to be. Just take that with your monthly income, and you can basically find out on your own if you can afford the home. In regards to assets, so generally speaking, if you're going to buy straight up an investment property, you will need 20% down of the sales price plus closing costs. Guys, if you've never purchased a home before, there is one way, I know a lot of people do this, where they will purchase a primary home, they'll live there for a year, and then they will end up making that an investment property. That is one way to get around the 20%. But generally speaking, if you're just going straight investment, yes, if you are buying a $200,000 home, that means $40,000 for the down payment, and your closing cost is typically between 7 and 12. I was about to say 7 and 11, but 7 and 12. For number 4, last point on this, and I'm bringing this up because there are some realtors in the room. I'm going to target the realtors here. Is there ever a percentage that you get told what closing costs will be? And if so, what's that percentage? 2 to 3%. Unless it's new construction. God, new construction. Yeah, they're a whole other animal. So if you have, say, a $100,000 home, I promise you it will be more than that 2 to 3%. You will not have $2,000 in closing costs. I wish. It's still going to be probably about $6,000 to $8,000. So just keep that in mind. That 2 to 3% is a good general rule of thumb, but it will not work on lower priced homes. Plain and simple. $150,000, your closing cost is going to be more than $300 or $4,500. All right, in regards to employment, so yes, we are going to be looking to make sure that you guys are working for at least 2 years. If you're not working for at least 2 years, that's okay too. Say you're in school and say, Brian, I just graduated 6 months ago. Perfect. Show me your transcripts. I just need to know that you weren't sitting at home watching Netflix for the last 24 months. That's basically it. Also, yes, you can be switching jobs. So if you just went and worked from Lockheed Martin and now all of a sudden you're a plumber, perfectly fine. I don't care as long as you're working and you're not watching Tiger King again. And then number 6, credit. We talked about this earlier. Last thing I'm going to bring up, we're looking for at least 640.
So when you're taking a look at a purchase and an investment purchase up front, the first piece is we have to identify the purchase price of the property. We're going to get into that a bit later, but what you want to do is bracket it in a fair market value. You want to do it, I think, like an appraiser is going to do it. Almost everybody's going to buy this home using a mortgage. If you're buying it using cash, same concept. An appraiser is going to look in that area. They're going to find what are the homes that are within plus or minus 10 square feet of this. They look similar in their style, similar in their age, similar in their upgrades, and then they're going to make some adjustments on that. So we want to figure out what's that bracket of value and where does this home fall inside of that. From there, if you're somewhat savvy, then you start to work on the negotiating strategy. In every offer, I'll talk about how you evaluate an offer and how you present a competitive one. But you want to get in the bracket because you have to remember, people think, especially investors, this is one thing that irritates me. They don't have a good rationale. And then the rationale is oftentimes just simply greed. I just want it for this. So, well, how'd you come up with this? Because the seller set a price for this. So in their mind, they already think this. So we have, maybe they're irrational, maybe, but still, even if they are, then we need extra rationality, not less rationality, right? So coming up with the price is key. Next, you have to figure out, are you going to pay cash or are you going to obtain some financing? Identifying the rental income. This is getting easier over time. But before, you really had to know the local market and you had to have hyper-local knowledge. Now there are websites like Zillow, which will give you a rentals estimate, not the most reliable, but fair. And there are some other sites that you can pay for, like Rent Range, where they're a little bit more expensive, but they're aggregating the data. I think it's a matter of time before this data is going to be standardized and we'll be able to have access to it. But until then, you want to know one of these guys, because these guys right here see hundreds and hundreds of rentals come through. And why is that so key? It's so key because you're going to see these return metrics that someone's going to sell you on. 8%. All right, everybody, we going to party just for a moment. I would not expect that to be your ringtone, to be honest, but that's fantastic. You're going to see that these return ratios are contingent on the income. So if you inflate the income, even by $100, you can go from a 6.5% return to an 8% return. And you're going to find out on the front end, you set your criteria, and you have to be judicious. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You can't get overly emotionalized about it. So having the income accurate is very important. After that, you want to figure out all the expenses that are associated with the property. And this is so imperative because, again, you got your income correct, you don't have your expenses correct, now your ratios don't make sense. All day to the bank, you're thinking, I got 8, 10, 12, 14% returns. And then you're looking at your statement, and you don't know how to read it. So then you bring it to a guy like me, or you bring it to Justin, you bring it to your accountant. They're like, yeah, you're not doing so well. Well, what am I missing? Hold on, this was supposed to be a slam dunk deal. Well, yeah, you missed all of these expenses. Our purchase criteria when we got into this for 804 Airport was this: under $250,000. Why? Typically, the rent to value ratio doesn't keep up. So here in Central Florida, once you get up above $200,000, $225,000, the amount of rental income you're getting, call it 1%. You buy it for $200, you can rent it out for $2,000. How many are you going to pay rent $2,000 for a $200,000 property? Not many of us, right? There's just not a lot of that here in our market. So under $250,000, total cash needed, less than $250,000, clearly. 50% rule, we could talk about this for a whole breakout session. We're not going to get into it, but that was one of our criteria. Cash flow, at least $100 or more. Really, we want it $200, $300, $400 if we can. Cash on cash return, again, whole summit. We're not going to get into the details of this. At least 7%. And then our overall return on investment. This is how much cash we put into it, how much cash is it throwing off, and the appreciation over time. If we have all those things together, we want at least 12%. Here are some assumptions, and these are really important. Our appreciation, we're banking, and if you look at the indexes, low end 3%, high end 7%. So if you work for a real estate investment trust, you'd say, hey Matt, that number should be 6 to 7%. To me, it really inflates the results. For a single family property, we don't have a blended portfolio. If we get 6 to 7%, fantastic. But the 100-year average is about 4% year over year, which you should know is about 2% more than inflation. So it's good to own some real estate as long as you buy it correctly. Income increases, average rental increase, 3 to 5% year over year. So we're estimating here low on the conservative end, and you'll see our numbers through and through are on the conservative end. I'm a young guy, I've got a young family, I want to be conservative, so I save up some money, I'm going to buy conservatively, and then if it outperforms, fantastic. Expenses increase, target rate of inflation through the Fed, much higher today, but they're at least saying 2%, 2.2%, that's about where it's at. Cost of selling, you have to think about the end in mind when you begin. When you go to sell this, at the very least, you're paying 2% to Uncle Sam. Most people don't sell on their own. They're going to hire somebody to do it for them. Even if they didn't, most buyers expect their agent to represent them. They don't want to be represented by the other party's counsel. So then you're paying the agent, whatever, 2.5%, 3%, it's 5%. If I was selling it myself, I'd probably hire somebody because there's some space that's healthy to have in between there. So 8% for the disposition. Itemizing operating expenses. Here's an example. This is the real example of what these numbers were. And this is key for the mortgage. You see your property taxes, and especially if it's your first time, you're going to look at the current property taxes. Those will reassess, especially in an appreciating market. I used right in the middle, 1% to 1.25% is typically acceptable. So we estimate the taxes up. The insurance, that's a real number. That number's gone up in the recent year. Everybody's insurance has kind of gone up. Property management, 10%. Maintenance, capital expenditures. Stuff's going to break. We want sinking funds and money set aside for when it breaks. Why? I only want one emergency. I have one emergency, the AC is out. I don't have two emergencies. The AC is out, and how am I going to pay for it? No, then you're freaking out, and then you want to sell the property, which is making you'll see tens of thousands of dollars every year. So you have to plan for it in advance. This is an older property built in 1951. Because of that, we're sticking more money away. In this particular case, no HOA fees, no utilities, and no landscaping. However, if you're buying multifamily, particularly condos, you're certainly going to have your HOA fees. And oftentimes, you're going to have your water built into that, maybe $40 a month or something like that. State of Florida, most of the time, though, tenants are taking care of utilities. Landscaping. We typically recommend a landlord account for landscaping. In this particular part of Sanford, it's okay. Nobody's going to police it, not going to be an issue, and it's been just fine. So $0 for landscaping. You'll see the total monthly carry there then, $354 per month. Summary of the purchase. So this particular purchase, again, going conservatively, we put 40% down. So you can get a loan, 20% down, 25% down. Here we were conservative, 40% down plus closing cost. So you'll see our purchase price, 1034. The amount that we financed, $62,000. Our down payment is right there, 41. Purchase cost, 27.5, which is 2.5%. So to your point, it's not always, but it can be pretty close to that. Rehab cost in this case, we're taking up front, $2,500. We knew this was in pretty sound condition. We were going to get it up, stabilized, rented, and then once we relet it in 2 years, that was our plan, and it worked just like that, then we're going to invest some more money into the property. We're going to repaint it, do some flooring, and that's exactly what we did. Total cash needed, $46,610. Our cash flow on it, $421 a month. Cap rate, really pretty irrelevant. Again, not going to get into irrelevant in this situation. Cash on cash return, pretty relevant. Most investors want to see a solid cash on cash return, so we're at 10.8%. ARV. So in the investment world, if you can purchase something under market value, or you luck out and you see something, and this is particularly important in this market. If you really want to walk out of here and find a deal, you're going to have to look for it. Absolutely look for it. Our market is so tight. Inventory is historically low. Seminole, Orange County, since they started tracking it, it's never been this low. Does that mean there's not opportunities? Absolutely not true. I'm still selling homes. I'm still getting buyers into homes with good deals, with equity on the front end. But you're going to have to look for it. Part of the way that you look for it is you can find a value-added opportunity. So in this case, you remember we bought it for 103.4, and our appraisal came back at 118. Fantastic. We structured fair market value on the purchase price. Owner was super agreeable to it. It was not an issue. So we move in with 7.9% equity. That's our cost of sale, right? So if we had to sell it the day of closing, we could do that and get out from underneath it. Hard to find, but fantastic when you do. Cash flows. So our initial rent, $1,200. Fair market value. Found a guy like Justin, who was myself, and came up with the rental amount. Vacancy, factored 10%. 10% is maybe 5 weeks. In our market, it's about 16 days. We had this rented in less than a week because we priced it appropriately. We had great marketing photos. The property was turnkey, ready to move into. So we overperformed on that number a bit. But that's where you want to set it. You want to have some cushion because you never know what's going to happen. It could take you a little bit longer to lease it out for any given reason. Operating income. When you make that adjustment, so I'd say if we're setting that aside, $1,080, our expenses, which we already covered, then that gives us our net operating income. If you're getting in advance, that'd be an important number. Our loan payment, cash flow, $421. Uncle Sam wants some, $316 is what kicks out. Not bad, right? Remember, we won $100. We're at $316. Not bad, right? Yes, guys, this is good. You need some emotion into it, right? Because you want to find this kind of stuff. This right here is legacy. And when looking, I spent 1.5 years looking for people. You know how many properties I looked over? 1.5 years. My eyes glossed over to find one. And then I find it. So you need a little bit of emotion. You need a little bit of you need some want factor. Annualize it because I need some emotion. And that's a bigger number. It's just times by 12. But it does it for me. So there we go. So every year, $5,000. Where's my big plan? I don't have a huge plan. Honestly, I think in the big scope of life, because I'm not tied to money, this number is going to be a pittance. But let me get a plan. Let me not be out over my skis. Let me not be too arrogant. If I had 10 of these and I had them all paid off, the average rent was $1,500. I was bringing down $150,000 a year. I gave Uncle Sam his portion. I had some stowed away for maintenance and reserves. What does that give me? Just guess. Let's just do ballparks. Well, yeah, hopefully I have a good accountant. But let's just have a guess, right? So $150,000 a year because I have 10 single-family rentals or 10 doors, and then I make some adjustments. What do I get? You're not going to be wrong. 100? Maybe somebody say 120, maybe 80, right? I could probably live off of all of those eventually. If I dial my lifestyle in, I'll probably be okay, right? That's what I'm looking for. Just some extra security here. We got some stuff in the stock market. It's going all right, but it's just some extra security. What do we pay attention to? I'm not going to bore you with this. I can already tell. We're kind of like, huh. So financial ratios, important ratio, rent to value. How much is it rent for compared to how much you're purchasing it for? So this right here, you can see, fantastic. If any of you guys have access to something close to this, let's talk. I don't even need a dog in the fight. I would just want for you to get it, because this would be a fantastic opportunity. What this is saying, if it was $100,000 of value in the purchase price, it rented for $1,200, 1.2%. If you can find 1%, old rule of thumb, if you're around other investors at a family event and you're talking about investments and you say, oh, I'm looking for something with a 1% rule, they're going to think you're in the club. They're going to think you got some credibility. And that's really important, because in this space, people get kind of tight. They get tight about what they know, tight about their knowledge, and you want to get their ear. You want the cousin Doug who's here at the top. But the guys at the top don't need to talk about it, and they know that, right? The guys at the top who are talking about it and need to talk about it, be careful, be cautious, right? So 1% rule, hey, looking for a property with this. That's what you need to do, be talking to people. Look, I'm interested, I'm an aspiring investor. I'm interested in being an investor. I'm looking into it. Talk. Next thing, debt coverage ratio or service ratio. This is the number of conservation. This is being conservative. So how much of that rent is covering my debt obligation? This was very important to me. That's why I put 40% down. This was in 2017. Every year, especially if you're an agent, we all feel like it's all coming down, right? The market's at the top. It's like, oh, what are you paying attention to? I don't know. We just don't know if it is. But if it were, I wanted to look at this and figure out, if the market crashed again, what does 804 rent for? And could I carry that number? $750. What this is telling me is my rent is 2.3 times the amount of my debt obligation. Great. So worst case scenario, I need to cover repairs and some management, but maybe I can manage it myself. That's a fantastic opportunity. I already talked about this, cash on cash return, main metric that people are looking for, overall return on investment. I think that here's the two things I want you to take from these numbers. Here's the two things. Cash on cash, why is it important? Well, because we can't guarantee speculation. We can't guarantee appreciation. That was 2004, 5, 6, 7. People are banking on appreciation. I'm buying this, holding it short term, I'm going to sell it. Risky, maybe, but our cash on cash, how much cash is it throwing off? When rents compress, when they go down in a suffering market, they don't compress that much. Because guess what? The market's suffering. What are people doing? They're selling and renting, right? They're getting foreclosed on and they're renting. So rents don't compress quite as much. So very important for us then to look at our cash on cash, because that's not going to compress too much. Overall return on investment, though, here's why this is important. So this is prudence. You want prudence. Be conservative. This right here, opportunity. You want to be an opportunist. That's how you get ahead. You take some risk. Entrepreneur, root word, someone who takes risk, right? So here, return on investment, I'm not even going to tell you that makes sense. I'm not sure if it does. But here's what I do know. Our second place we bought, I went and looked up the public records. It sold for $38,000 back in 1984. It was the first, or 82. It was the first house on the block. $34,000. I paid $200,000 for it. That wasn't that long ago. Back then, Grandma Myrtle was probably like, you crazy if you think that number is going, I don't know, Grandma. It's happening. So that's where the real wealth, the big wealth is built. And then from that, even if you didn't cash it out and sell it, you have options. You can get a HELOC, you can get a second mortgage, you have equity, and you have security inside of your mind that I have assets, and those assets can be sold if I need to. I'm not going to go into all of this. I've already talked too long. So here's the scoop. You want to buy a home? Don't go it alone. Get educated on it. There's a lot of liability. It's based on civil law. It's about the technicality. One day, tens of thousands of dollars. One oversight in disclosures, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. You do not want me on the other end of the purchase representing my buyer and you've overlooked something. Now I'm fair, I'm reasonable, but I have their interest in mind. I'm coming after you in a very kind and assertive way, right? It's expensive. So get somebody who's a pro. They understand how to structure an offer, price, terms, who are the people who are involved. Escrow and due diligence, you get it ratified, boom, this is the date. All the contract dates fall in line after that. All that due diligence needs to be done. It needs to be done in a precise way. Your inspections, you want to be prudent, look the thing over. Have some margin when you're buying it. There's going to be issues, guaranteed, every single time. Brand new, really old, always issues. Those are different kind of inspections you can get. Appraisal, kind of roll of the dice. An opinion of value, required, have to have one. That's why when you evaluate on the front end, always look at it like the appraiser does. Try to get everybody to do that, because then when this comes in and it's different, now you've at least had the conversation. Makes it easy to renegotiate. And the closing, there's some documents and stuff you got to do before your keys. All right. Well, hey, we're going to finding a resident. Is that you? All right. Here you go, sir.
Thank you, Matt. That was a fantastic overview. Hopefully everybody got something out of that. That was great. So once you've purchased the property, now we're into finding a resident, somebody who's going to occupy it and then drive all these numbers that Matt took us through. This is a critical part. So the first part, as Matt said, is you want to get the home in rent-ready condition. What this means is that you're going to go through it. You're going to identify anything that needs to be fixed mechanically, physically, and cosmetically, and get that up to the higher standard possible so that you can achieve the highest rent possible in the shortest amount of time. A clean and well-maintained home will attract better residents at a higher rate and in less time, for sure. So there's, again, you're back to the team. Who's on the team that's going to help you out with this? It's going to be your maintenance team. It's going to be your property management team who's going to be coordinating all of these things. Flooring contractors, cleaning companies, the whole 9 yards, landscapers, everything. You're going to want to take it top to bottom and make sure that everything is addressed. And the reason why you want to spend some time here is that the goal of the investor is to find a resident who's going to be able to perform on the lease, and they're going to move in, and they're going to have little to no issues throughout the term of the lease. What most people don't realize is that during the course of the lease, each maintenance problem or each thing that wasn't addressed really quite as well as it should have been on the front end, those are just going to lead towards non-renewals. And vacancy being one of the greatest expenses that the landlord is going to encounter, you want to address those things up front. You want somebody to be able to move into a well-maintained, nice, clean, ready-to-go home. They're not going to have any issues. They can focus on other aspects of their life and not having to meet vendors and such at the house. Of course, things are going to break. That's just the nature of things. But you want to minimize that and mitigate it to the extent possible. Marketing. So from here, house is ready to go. It looks great. You're going to take this thing to market. And a lot of this stuff has been done previously, concurrently with the make ready and so forth. But here you're going to be, prior to this, you're going to be establishing the rent rate. You've done your due diligence and so forth on the front end. Matt's walked you through what the rent rates are supposed to be. We're going to confirm that. Oftentimes we're partners in that, but we're going to have that established and ready to go. And from there, we're going to actually take photos. We're going to take very good photos. It's amazing when you just cruise around MLS or Realtor.com and looking for rental properties, the stuff that's out there. It's just incredible. It's not really that hard to take good pictures and present the house well. So good quality photos and video are key. Listing descriptions are key. You're going to want to have a nice, clear, concise overview of the home, the area, and so forth, keeping in mind fair housing considerations and things like that, so that you're not running afoul there. And you want to have it as detailed as possible. You'll see that as well. You'll just see, sort of house for rent, beautiful area, call. It's just not enough. People want to see detail. They want to see the pictures and the video behind that. Video, especially nowadays. When folks start calling, if you hire a property management company, they're going to be taking care of most of this for you. You're just sort of going to be waiting in the wings and getting updates and so forth as time progresses. If you're doing it yourself, this is an area that we see a lot of people fall flat. Folks are going to be calling. They want to see the house. You've posted it. You've done all this effort and put all this work into getting it to this point, and now you're not answering the phone. You got to answer the phone. You've got to answer inquiries when people call and want to see it. They want to see it now. We live in the now society. Everybody wants everything yesterday. So you want to make that showing process and that viewing process as easy and convenient for the potential applicant as possible. Meet them there. Do whatever you can to accommodate them. And of course, be friendly. It's amazing how many times we see from folks who are coming through our doors and renting from us, from Innovative Realty, how many times we hear that they were calling on different houses and they were just like, they just weren't nice. The house is great, but they just weren't nice. And people want to deal with nice people, so just be friendly. If you're going it alone, these are some of the bigger sites that you want to advertise on. Everybody's familiar with Zillow, HotPads, Trulia, Realtor.com, Apartments, Padmaster. There's a ton of them out there. And there's many more that these sites aggregate to. There's just hundreds and hundreds of them. But those are the big guys. Those are where you want to be. Application screening. So you've done all the work up to this point. You've found somebody who's made application on your property. And now this is where the rubber meets the road. This probably is the most important aspect of this entire process. You want to know exactly who you're going to be dealing with over the next 12 months and beyond. And this is where this all starts. And you'll see this being done in a variety of ways. Some people do it exceptionally well. Many people don't do it at all, and everywhere in between. So the first step is you want to have a very nice, very comprehensive credit check and identity verification. We've not encountered too much fraud or folks trying to present themselves as someone who they weren't, but we have. It's not as often as you would think. But then again, those folks aren't coming to management companies and so forth. They're going after the private owners because they're generally not as sophisticated. But you want to know who you're dealing with. That includes getting driver's licenses and actually seeing and confirming who those people are. You're going to run criminal and civil background searches. Oftentimes that's done through a contractor, a third party. There's a number of those out there. And those guys are great, but what you want to do up and above them, and what we do in our office, is we're going to do those same things, and then we're going to take it one step further. So we're actually looking manually into the last few counties that they've lived in, and we're going to confirm everything that the security contractor found. We're going to double check that manually ourselves, just to make sure that we haven't missed anything or nothing's been missed. Rental history and landlord verifications are good. Definitely something you want to do as well. Sometimes you'll get those back, sometimes you won't. It just depends on who the previous landlord was. We have had instances of folks engaging their relatives to pose as their previous landlord. It's only been a handful of times, but it is always funny. And in that case, Katie can attest to that. In that case, you're like a detective. It's a lot of fun. You're really trying to find out what's going on here. Are they being forthright and honest? And it is kind of exhilarating when you catch someone who's not being honest, and some of them are pretty good. Some of them not so much. It's pretty easy. We'll see stuff coming across, forged income documents, forged employment offer letters. What's that? Yes. So you'll see some pretty good attempts at it, and you'll see some that are just horrific. We're not sure what they were going to try and pass off on. And then employment history and income verification, and you're going to want to have thresholds for those things. So in our case, we're looking at 3 times the monthly rent and gross income. Obviously, you prefer that they were employed. And those are things that you're going to go back and verify as well, not just take their word for it. Lease signing. So now you've gone through. You've found a qualified tenant who's going to be able to perform on the lease. You've done all your background examinations. Everything's come back well. And now you're taking them to the next step, which is lease signing. Our recommendation is that you use an attorney to draft a lease. You can find them on, the Florida Supreme Court has a lease. You'll see that occasionally. A lot of properties that we take over from private landlords, we'll find leases done on Office Max leases, something that somebody kind of cobbled together from a bunch of different places. Oftentimes they're not signed, they're not executed properly. They're just not going to perform well for you. So you want to have a nice, clear, concise lease that's going to address all of those things that potentially may come up during a residency. Of course, this kind of goes without saying, but you're going to want to keep a detailed ledger of all financial transactions up front, and then, of course, during the lease. Again, we take properties over from private landlords all the time, and we find this not to be the case. We took one over recently where nobody knew what had been paid and what had been collected. The tenants didn't know, the landlord didn't know, and we were sort of left trying to piece everything together. So you want to stay on top of that and make sure you've got a nice detailed ledger of all financial transactions. In the lease, you should also explain who's going to be responsible for what. And this varies from management company to management company. It'll vary from owner to owner. That's all sort of up for negotiation. But you're going to want to outline who's responsible for what. Who's going to be taking care of the landscaping? Who's going to be taking care of the pool, air conditioning filters, all those sort of things. You want to have that nicely detailed out. Notice periods, default penalties, mandatory minimum fees charged at move-outs, cleaning, carpet cleaning, things like that. All of those things should be addressed on the front side so that when the lease ends or expires naturally, there's no discrepancies and everybody knows what's going to happen. You want to have the resident sign the lease as soon as possible. and collect the security deposits and funds as soon as possible. Once they've signed the lease, they're locked in. So what we do is we have a brief 15-minute, 20-minute meeting with the potential resident or the resident. They've executed the lease on the day of the move-in. We're going to take them back through the lease and all the key points. We're going to sort of set the stage for what they can expect from us and what we're going to expect from them throughout this tenancy so that everybody's on the same page. There's no issues. Everybody knows what's going to go on. And oftentimes I think, and I don't know that I have any empirical evidence to back this up, but oftentimes I think this is sort of sets the stage for the relationship. Everybody knows what they're getting into, and I would like to believe it proceeds much more smoothly from that point. Pro tip, do not ever give anyone the keys to the house until you have collected all of the funds and hopefully executed the lease. We see this from time to time too. You'll hear all sorts of excuses. Oh, I couldn't make it to the bank. Can you just give me the keys and I'll bring the check back later? You're going to want to collect all of those funds up front. You're going to want to make sure that they clear the bank prior to handing over keys. And then just prior to the move-in, this is going to kind of set the stage for what's going to happen at the end of the residency. So the best practice, and these again, they're just a brief summary of the kind of the best practices, but before the resident moves in. So we've just taken through lease signing and the actual move in, but just prior to that, a few days before, you're going to want to walk back through that property. And what you're doing is just checking to make sure everything's in order. So it's still clean. Nothing's happened since the last time you were there. There's no leaks. You'd be amazed at how many times sometimes that happens. Even on the real estate side, I myself have had closings that we were there 3 days before. The day of closing, we're going through our final walkthrough, and a pipe had broken and leaked all over the place. So you're going to want to check for those things and make sure everything's ready to go. While you're there, you're taking photos of every square inch of that property, inside and out, interior and exterior. And the reason for this, and actually I'll get back to that, but you're also going to take video of the same. The reason for this is when you've got a large catalog of photos and video of the interior and exterior of the home, you now have a record of its condition prior to the resident's move-in. Resident moves in, they live there for a year, 2 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, they move out. When they move out, you're going to do the same thing in reverse. You're going to go back to the house, you're going to take an inventory of everything, you're going to take an all new set of move-out photos and video, and you're going to compare those two, from the move-out to the move-in. Any of those items that were damaged during the resident's tenancy, now you have a record of it, and you can file a much more clear security deposit claim with all the evidence to back that up. Failing to do that then puts the security deposit claim in jeopardy, gives the tenant a lot more leverage to dispute that security deposit claim. So the more you can do up front, the better off you are on the backside. And you're going to note things like cosmetic deficiencies and so forth. And like I said, it establishes a foundation for security deposit claims, which is, out of the entire process, the most contentious aspect of landlord-tenant relationship, security deposit claims. Once the resident takes occupancy. And these are sort of just general best practices again. You've gotten everything together, they've moved in, and now what you're doing is you're just preserving the relationship. I've always looked at the landlord-tenant relationship. It's interesting to see even some of our owners who have a slightly different perspective on this. Our perspective has always been the resident is our customer. No different than if I owned a Starbucks and somebody walked in and ordered coffee. You'd want them to have a nice experience. That relationship actually begins before they've even moved in. It begins with their first contact to you or their office. You want their experience on the front side to be fluid, seamless, convenient. Everything from viewing the property to the whole lease aspect to signing, getting keys. They move into a nice, ready-to-go property, and everywhere in between. What that does is that leads towards lease renewals. So this is an ongoing process. There's no one thing that's just the lease renewal. It's an ongoing process. So you're going to, as a part of this, you're going to make sure that in the instance or in the case that something does come up, they've got a maintenance issue or whatnot, you're going to want to handle that promptly and efficiently. And this is back to your team again. You're going to want to lean on your team for this, whether it be the property management company, or if you're doing it yourself, you're going to want to have your stable of vendors and trades to take care of those things quickly for the resident. You're going to want to only work with vendors that are licensed and insured. I could probably spend a few hours up here telling you stories of owners I know who wanted to save a few bucks, work with a vendor who's not licensed nor properly insured, and it's cost them just fortunes. And it's just incredible. It's a very easy thing to do. Just make sure you're going to want to verify that any folks that are doing any work in the house are licensed and insured. That could be a tremendous liability for you if not. Like I said previously, any maintenance calls you want to handle quickly. You want to maintain communication with the resident throughout. Sometimes, things take time. AC system goes down. They only go down Christmas morning or on a Sunday. That's pretty much the only time that happens. And you want to, and just a lot of the stress on the resident side is alleviated by just consistent communication with them. Here's what we're doing. Here's when we expect it to be done, so on and so forth. Don't just, let it go and hope for the best. So you want to keep those folks involved. And a best practice, again, you're going to want to inspect that property at least twice per year. So if you're the landlord or you're the property management company, regardless, you're going to want to get in there for a look. You're going to want to see that they're maintaining the property as you would expect. You're going to want to see that they're adhering to the terms of the lease. There's no unauthorized pets, residents, friends, family, whatever it might be. You're just ensuring that everything is good. And you especially want to do that before you offer a lease renewal. So, and that's key. If things aren't as you would like them to be, you want to know that before you've sent the lease out to be renewed, and you can address it from there. And again, just a quick listing of all those folks that you want to have on the team. And those are the kind of the big ones, the key ones. The lease renewal process, as we said, that begins the moment the individual contacts you as a potential applicant. Keep that in mind. I think a lot of folks lose sight of that, and I think that's a critical aspect of maintaining a high lease renewal percentage. Remain professional and friendly throughout the term of the lease. Maintain the home to the highest standards. You're going to want to uphold them, the tenants. You're going to have some issues from time to time. That's just if you're in the business long enough or you've got enough property, you're going to have some issues. But you want to handle those gracefully and with kindness, but you want to be firm yet fair. So, and a lot of that is done by adhering to the terms of lease. So if you charge a late fee, you better collect that late fee. If you let them get away with some things or pay rent late, then you've done some other things. Now you've sort of soured the relationship. You may have even created a legal condition called waiver. So now if you're accepting rent on the 15th of the month, just because you're a nice guy and they're nice people, well now their new rent date is the 15th of the month. Most people don't know that, but when you go to court, the judge is going to remind you of that, and just a lot of issues come up as a result. Early bird gets the worm. You want to be proactive in asking them to renew. So we shoot out our lease renewals about 75 days in advance. We'll start working on that, and you got to be willing to negotiate. Vacancy is the greatest cost generally that an owner will experience. And there's a lot of different ways to negotiate. Many people think, hey, if I'm going to negotiate on the lease, it's going to be in terms of the rent rate. That's not entirely true. A lot of times someone said, no, I'm perfectly happy to go up, 50 or 75 bucks a month, but I really would like a new stove, or I would like this. And you want to be listening for those sort of things, because oftentimes you can still get your higher rent by making a capital improvement to the house at the same time. It's a win-win for both. So a lot of times there's ways to structure that where you're getting the rent that you want and you're actually making the resident happy as well. Katie's little stick-it note up there, keeping your residents happy throughout the lease term significantly increases the chances of release renewal, which is what you want. And then from here, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Alberto, who's going to take you through Matt Kelly's property and the numbers as they have been since that time that he purchased it. Alberto?
Hey everyone, my name is Alberto, and now when we got through the boring stuff, we're going to go into the fun part, which is seeing what are the results after we get through all that work. So a little bit about me. I'm the business development manager here in Innovative Realty, and in regards to my background, before I go into my background, I want to ask a question, get you involved a little bit, because it's some of you already falling asleep. Who here is from not from the US? Who is international? Anyone here? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 4. We have some people. Okay, well, I'm a little bit all over the place as well. I was originally born in Bulgaria. I grew up in Cyprus. Then I moved to the UK and I decided to study business because of the flexibility. And then right after that, I decided to come to the US and get into real estate again because of the flexibility. And the most rewarding part when you go through the entire process of doing everything correctly are the final numbers which you look at and see that you finally are making some progress. So without further ado, let's get to Matt's property. These are his original numbers that he walked you through in the beginning. We put them a little bit more, in a little bit clearer way there. You can see the purchase price, closing costs, loan amount, interest rate, the loan terms, and the cash that he used to purchase the property. His initial rent was $1,200. That's what the residents were paying to him, and that made his gross income $14,400. Then you have the expenses at the bottom: property tax, insurance, vacancies. Matt was actually very conservative, and he decided to put 5% aside for maintenance and repairs. Vacancy, that was 10%. Capital expenditure, that was 7%. And the management fees, which were there for 10%. So with all this, his total monthly expenses were $890, which was $10,680 for the year. The net income was $309 cash flow per month. The yearly net cash flow was $3,713. The returns of the investment was 3.59 in the first year. That's what he was predicting. And then his yearly cash flow plus the cash-on-cash returns on investment. Now, he purchased this property in January 2018? Okay. So here's what happens 38 months later. This is the actual numbers of the property right now. The purchase price, of course, it doesn't change. Everything, the first part pretty much stays the same. The monthly income now is $1,365. The rent increased over the 3 years, and so his gross income went up to $16,380. Property taxes, I believe they're around the same price. Insurance, repairs, maintenance, vacancies, all these things remain the same. Now, how his cash flow increased, it went up to $421 per month. That also increased his net yearly income, and therefore his cash-on-cash return investment went up to 10.86%. Now, what I really like about real estate is how we can look through these numbers 3 years later, and it's pretty much like looking under the hood of a car, and you can see how we can improve it even further. First thing I noticed was the 4.25% interest he's paying. So, Matt, why don't you go talk to Brian after the show, and you can see how you can reduce that. That can increase your cash flow, and you can improve your returns. Moreover, he can, for example, let's point out some other things: decrease his expense on insurance, and maybe increase the rent a little, because we're actually looking at it when doing the numbers, and the rent is still quite a bit under the market value. So the next part is something that is not shown on this chart. The next part is the net income and management fees, and okay, we'll skip through that because we're running a little bit late on time. But this is the important part. This is where you see the property appreciation. As you remember, he purchased for $103,000. Now, the current market value of the property is about $153,000. Of course, that doesn't happen in every market, every time. We have a very hot market and everything increased in price. But within 38 months of ownership, he increased his property value by almost 50%. The mortgage payments that the tenants made towards the loan was almost $12,000. The equity in the home now increased to $52,000. The reserves and repairs that he gathered over the 38 months are $2,500. These are still his money, even though they're not on the chart as cash flow, and it doesn't look so attractive as an investment. They're still there for him in case he needs repairs. Reserves for vacancy, another $5,000. Capital expenditure, another $3,500. And depreciation is something we didn't really talk about, but for 38 months, you have $7,300 in depreciation. That's something that your accountant would be more, he's the expert to talk to, and he'll be able to explain you more details, but that's something to account as well. Now, after you review all these things and you see all the benefits of everything that you gain over the years, you need to keep repeating that. You can also utilize that property and, for example, refinance and not just decrease your interest rate, but you can also pull money out and invest into more properties and keep repeating it over and over and over again until you reach your goal. I kind of skipped through everything, but I wanted to keep it short because we're already running late on time. So with that being said, I would like to proceed to question and answers now, or maybe not.
Before we do the Q&A, We're going to do the raffle. So we have a $100 gift card. Why don't you just pick the name and I'll read it. Jeff George. Okay, and you guys all have surveys in front of your seats. If you guys could fill those out, we'd really appreciate your feedback. This is, like I said, our first live event in over a year, so we're constantly trying to improve and learn and get better at what we do, and we want to know what you guys think. We also want to know what kind of topics you're interested in learning more about. So since our speakers are all going to be sitting over here at the table, I will pass the mic over. If anybody has any questions, please just let us know and we'll pass it to the right person.
Questions, anyone? Oh, I have. Are you going to share this presentation to the people that signed up via email? We can. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? Yeah, we're also going to send out just sort of a quick top 10 of things to be aware of as an investor. So we'll send those out via email tomorrow or Monday. Just kind of a little added thing. We'll send a PDF of the PowerPoint. Yep. Anybody have any questions?
I know it's different for every person, but when you buy your first property, you get your second property, is there a point where it starts to get uncomfortable or too little? Does it cost you more? Like if I have 4 properties and something goes wrong with one of them, I know the rule of thumb is different for each person, but how many should you have? And again, I'm thinking about having 10 myself, because at the 4,000 number, that's 40,000 a year cash value.
I think there might be 2 answers to that. So from, if I understand what you're saying, I'm sorry, let me repeat the question. So the question was, is there a point, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there a point in time or a number of properties where things become too difficult to manage or handle? And I think that's maybe a 2-part answer. First, generally speaking, what you'll find if you're going to be handling properties yourself is somewhere in that 5, 7 range. You're going to most people start burning out. There's just issues that come up. There's just too much day-to-day things going on. And at that point, you'll oftentimes start seeing people reaching out to management companies. Someone to take a lot of the day-to-day operational aspects off their plate, leaving them to focus on whatever their day job might be, or even go out and finding new properties. The other side of that would be from the mortgage aspect. You're going to bump up, and Brian can probably correct me if I'm wrong, at a certain number of properties, you're going to start bumping up against a threshold that they're going to maybe give you some trouble about. So I might turn that over to Brian to answer.
To the second part, the number's 10 once you have 10 properties. But on a personal level, I have 3 properties, and I'm already about to lose my mind and talk to these guys to get set up before I even think about the 4th. So I have a personal goal to have $120,000 annual just rental income. The only reason I picked that number is $10,000 a month. It's just easy for my mind. I'm nowhere near that, but I know that's where I'm headed. So I want to get set up with property management prior to that 5 to 7, where I know I'm going to burn out even more. So again, I have 3. I just got my 3rd a couple months ago, and I'm already thinking, okay, I know I want to get this set up before the 4th. So like you said, it's dependent on every different person. Sure.
Also, if I can get back to the loan part, like Brian said, it's about 10 properties, especially if it's a married couple. You can trick the system in a way and get 10 on each name. Then you can do 20 for a couple. But once you get to that point, there's still creative ways to do it, and that's the best part about real estate. That's where you can get into commercial financing. You can get refinancing on the entire portfolio that you own and go out and keep buying more properties.
So now to piggyback off of that, a strategy that a lot of people take is if you are with somebody, whether it be husband and wife or significant other, and like you guys have that same plan, just like Alberto was alluding to, you can go and purchase a property just under, say, your name, and say it's your first one, you're considered a first-time home buyer, which you get benefits for that. And then your significant other can do the exact same thing, be a first-time home buyer just under their name, and then now that property that was yours now becomes your investment property, and so on and so forth.
Last time I'm adding something, I promise. You can also have the loan under one name and have the title under both of your names if you're a couple. That's the other thing I wanted to add.
That's it. I'm not going to go back.
I might add something to that. So I thought it was 10, but I figured I let the expert speak. But there are also other ways where you won't necessarily need a mortgage, some of the more creative ways, creative financing ways. A lot of investors don't even know that things like this exist, but you'll hear the term subject to or lease option. Those are other ways where the bank's not involved at all, but you're still able to buy the property and take title to it. So they're a little bit more creative. So anything else? Any other questions? We'll be here also, so if anybody has any questions afterward, feel free to stop by and approach anyone on the team. Ms. Katie, you're closing us out.
Thank you everyone for coming. Can we have a big round of applause for our speakers? We really appreciate it. It was lovely to see all of your faces, and we'll be up here if you guys have any questions. Thanks.